Why did the unsinkable Titanic, a technological wonder, sink on its initial voyage? This was no ordinary day, though. It began like any other for the busy port of Southampton on April 10, 1912. The RMS Titanic, the most magnificent ship the world had ever seen, captivated the thousands who had congregated around the docks. The Titanic was the crowning achievement of nautical engineering and human aspiration. It was more than 882 feet long, shimmering with grace, and draped in luxury. Those who boarded the ship experienced something more than just crossing the Atlantic. They were touching the fabric of history. As they said their goodbyes to friends and family, the passengers on board the Titanic had no idea that their journey would finish not in the warm embrace of New York Harbor, but in the icy depths of the North Atlantic, becoming one of the most notorious disasters in human history. So, where did we go wrong? How was it possible for this ship, which was designed to withstand disasters, to go down so fast and with such a devastating impact? Today, we're going deep into the 6 essential mistakes that sealed the Titanic's destiny. These blunders, which range from ignored warnings to technical faults, tell the terrifying narrative of how human greed and carelessness caused one of the most terrifying catastrophes in history. The Titanic's beginnings and unbreakable confidence building on the Titanic began in Belfast, Northern Ireland in 1909. Designed to be the ultimate of luxury and power, it took 2,000 workers 3 tortuous years to finish. When the ship was launched, it wasn't simply a ship, it was a spectacle. The Titanic wasn't simply big, it was unsinkable, or so everyone assumed. On April 10, 1912, with a ship full of enthusiastic travelers, the Titanic sailed on its first excursion. Among those on board were the affluent elite, explorers, and immigrants, all seeking hopes of a new life in America. But even as they flew onward, 6 catastrophic blunders lurked just out of sight. Mistake number 1. The push for speed. The first mistake took root the moment the Titanic sailed. Captain Edward Smith, an experienced and renowned captain with 40 years at sea, was given a hard timetable to be in New York by April 17. The ship's schedule became its nemesis. Despite the Titanic's huge size, Smith maintained high speeds throughout the voyage, maintaining a quick pace across the Atlantic. It was believed the Titanic could endure anything, and therefore the concerns of speed were brushed aside. Mistake number 2. Ignoring critical warnings. As the Titanic continued its trip, warnings of impending trouble began to arrive. Throughout the evening of April 14, surrounding ships sent a total of 6 messages, alerting the Titanic to floating icebergs on its course. Yet these warnings were brushed aside. Either they were not prioritized by the radio operators or they simply did not reach the bridge in time. The Marconi operators, tasked with handling the ship's wireless telegraph, were concerned with sending and receiving passenger communications rather than delivering these important safety alerts. They were informed that the Titanic was unsinkable, so what was there to fear? Mistake number 3. Lack of binoculars for lookouts. As the Titanic slashed through the icy waters of the Atlantic, the lookouts stationed high above scoured the horizon for any signs of icebergs. However, there was a glaring oversight: they didn't have binoculars. The crew had been taught to recognize danger, but without binoculars, they could only see so far. Had they been armed with this essential equipment, they might have detected the iceberg earlier, allowing for precious moments to direct the ship away from danger. But by the time the iceberg was ultimately sighted on that moonless night, it was too late. Mistake number 4. Inferior materials in the ship's rivets. When the Titanic encountered the iceberg, it wasn't simply the force of the collision that killed it, but the basic materials employed in its construction. Experts eventually determined that the Titanic's rivets, the metal fasteners holding the steel plates together, were made of a weaker iron rather than steel. As the iceberg scraped along the hull, the iron rivets simply burst under the strain, allowing water to flow into the lower compartments at a catastrophic rate. Had better materials been utilized, the Titanic might have been able to resist the crash, or at least buy more time for rescue. Mistake number 5. Insufficient lifeboats. When the Titanic set sail, it was built to store 32 lifeboats, but only carried 20. This decision was made to avoid crowding the deck and was based on obsolete safety requirements. With almost 2,200 people on board, the lifeboats could only save around half the passengers at best. When the order to escape ship was finally given, there weren't enough lifeboats for everyone, and chaos erupted. Passengers hurried to the decks, but the paucity of lifeboats meant painful choices had to be made, and only a minority of those on board would have a chance of survival. Mistake number 6. Lifeboats launched half-empty. In the fear, another deadly error occurred. Many of the lifeboats that were launched weren't filled to full, as crew members favored first-class passengers or feared that filling them would make the lifeboats too heavy. In the end, many seats went vacant as lifeboats drifted away, leaving behind hundreds who could have been saved. At 12:45 a.m., the first emergency flare was launched. Passengers congregated on the deck, waiting for a miracle that never arrived. By 2:18 a.m., the Titanic's lights flickered and went out as the ship broke in two, sinking beneath the frigid waves. In just over 2 hours, the unsinkable ship was gone. The aftermath and lessons learned in the frigid Atlantic waters: nearly 1,500 lives were lost. Survivors were later rescued by the RMS Carpathia, but the Titanic's disaster would permanently affect maritime rules and ship safety standards. The catastrophe produced greater lifeboat criteria, stricter communication methods, and breakthroughs in shipbuilding materials. The sinking of the Titanic was a brutal reminder of the hazards of human hubris. Overconfident in their creation, engineers, the White Star Line, and even the captain himself, ignored vital safety safeguards in favor of luxury and speed. The unsinkable fantasy failed because, in their quest of grandeur, they neglected the very real constraints of human engineering. And with that stated, thanks for watching, and until next time.